Well, in the relatively affluent village of Harrison, New York in Westchester County, they're dealing with sexual harassment allegations at its own police department. FiOS 1 and the Journal News looking deeper into these accusations. Here's FiOS 1's Ray Ramundi.
Is there just anything you would like to say at all? I want to make sure I'm balanced.
Thank you.
Nothing at all?
No, thank you.
Harrison Police Chief Michael Olsey briskly walking away from our camera, declining to comment. The chief is being accused of sexual harassment, the claims made by one of his own detectives.
I think I'm surprised anytime a public official is accused of something of this nature. I rolled the
Journal News investigative reporters Matt Spillane and Mark Lungariello tackling these serious allegations made by Detective Durga Abate. Abate, a veteran with the Harrison Police Department, alleges relentless harassment for a period of 6 years.
The evidence that she presented to us is certainly worth looking into and concerning.
That evidence is detailed in this complaint form filed by Detective Abate to the town of Harrison. Abate claims the alleged abuse began after she started dating her now husband, who is a police officer in the department. The detective alleges Olsey sent her text messages quoting sexual rap song lyrics. One text in 2016, she said, quote, "You and I should get together." Abate responded, "No, I'm married. You have met my husband. If my husband even knew you asked, he would kill you." Detective Abate alleges that Police Chief Olsey inappropriately touched her during an event that happened right here at police headquarters in October of last year. 2 months later, she decided to file this complaint with the town of Harrison, saying that she wasn't going to stay silent no more about this alleged physical and verbal abuse. The alleged inappropriate touching happening after Abate says, quote, her assignment was to dress up as a cartoon character from the Paw Patrol to take pictures with children. Abate says, quote, when the chief stood next to me to take his picture, he grabbed my ass and said, "Oh, is that your tail?" In a very angry tone, I said, "Not funny," and he just laughed. Abate also claims Olsey ordered her to handle personal errands for his business and home while she was on duty. The footage here shows security cameras being set up outside of Chief Olsey's home. Abate says Olsey ordered her and 2 other department employees to install 5 cameras. Abate also says she was sent to this laundromat, owned by Olsey, to fix a credit card machine while on duty.
According to Detective Abate, that was kind of a regular thing that occurred between the chief's laundromat in town, his home, and dealing with things outside of work.
Do you have anything to say, attorney, as well?
No.
Deputy Attorney Nelson Cantor, Harrison Town Attorney Frank Allegretti, and Mayor Ron Belmont refused our request for comment, only telling us, quote, it's under investigation.
You know, they said the one with the longest mic has the longest stuff.
This video from a Harrison Town Hall board meeting in late December is posted on the town's website. The comments made by the mayor right before the meeting began. Detective Abate told me she viewed the video and says the culture of the town board is a, quote, boys club. The mayor's comments seemingly appear to reinforce her concerns, and she says the board is intentionally not being transparent with this investigation. And Matt Spillane agrees.
It's been more than 2 weeks since the complaint was filed, and it's unclear who, if anyone, has been interviewed, if the town board plans to take any action.
The town of Harrison now waits the results of this investigation. We, of course, will keep you updated. In Harrison, Ray Ramundi, FiOS 1 News.
Detective Abate says that she stayed silent for years throughout this harassment because she didn't want to jeopardize her husband possibly getting promoted within the department. But in the end, he didn't wind up getting that promotion. Now, you saw Matt Spillane in Ray's piece, and I sat down with he and fellow Journal News investigative reporter Mark Lungariello, and we dug further into this story. Guys, for folks who aren't familiar, and it gets a little insular, I grant it, they may remember I've seen the Harrison police in the headlines in the last decade for a lot of reasons other than notable arrests, etc. It's been a difficult decade, hasn't it, for them?
It has. There's been several controversies, I guess you could say. There was the Facebook 4 scandal, which involved lewd comments about the then Mayor Joan Walsh and then President Barack Obama. There was also the last police chief was suspended and retired while he was suspended, resigned while he was suspended last year before any investigation was concluded. So there's been a few things for sure.
And Matt, it ran the gamut, allegedly, from being propositioned by the now chief to being put on errands, to being marginalized, to continue with comments, both digital or in person here, that also would rise to the level of harassment, again, if the allegations are true. And seemingly other people, when they had problems, including the 2009 emails, those folks are getting promoted when others aren't. It certainly doesn't paint a pretty picture of the culture within the PD.
No, it does not. You know, Detective Abate's claims go back years, and if what she's accusing the chief of doing is kind of creating a culture where things are not necessarily handled fairly or properly, and creating an environment where herself and maybe other officers don't feel like they can do their jobs in a productive, safe environment.
To that end here, there has been a perception among some, and some of this was public with a prior mayor and a prior police chief, that the town and the police department were two very different entities, sometimes with two very different agendas here. Police department didn't like the oversight sometimes from the town, et cetera, and it basically ran in many cases on its own. And replete throughout the complaint was, who do I go to? I would go to folks here, and basically she didn't see a remedy to try and correct this, and then she was concerned about her husband's potential promotion and being compromised for it as well. But that's as much of the story, I think, as anything else, which is not only is it so insular, but basically they were running themselves.
That's not just the police department in Harrison. I think it's no secret that's Harrison in general. There are a lot of family connections, people that know each other going back generations and generations and generations. And yes, a former police chief ran against the sitting mayor. Joan Walsh was the mayor, and Dave Hall was the police chief, ran for office against Joan Hall several years ago. So there's always been a little political situation with the police department. Of course, the former chief, Anthony Maricini, brother of former town supervisor Phil Maricini, there's always been this weird dynamic between the way that the police operates and the civilian oversight of that department. And I think we're seeing it again now. They'll be handling this investigation. So it's being handled internally. And will those accusations or that infighting come up again? We'll see when the investigation is complete.
And I know this is inside baseball, but even in that in the Walsh campaign here, some of the comments that came from actual members of the police department about the sitting mayor, beyond lewd and crude. I mean, especially putting in today's context, and not that it was that many years ago. Again, for a lot of folks, that was pretty telling as to, my God, do these folks feel emboldened?
Mm-hmm. And, I don't want to say it's just Harrison, I think, and, what you've seen the story is the lack of female representation in police departments and all that.
4 officers out of a 67-person force,
There are
right?
4 officers, 67 budgeted positions this year. So there's, it's not just in the Harrison department. There are a lack of female officers, generally speaking, in law enforcement. And I think that kind of feeds to your point a bit, which is that, maybe there aren't as many avenues, or there is a culture of acceptance of this kind of thing in law enforcement.
Where do we think this goes from here, Matt? Because as mentioned before by Mark, when there was a previous incident, the chief both was in effect suspended and then resigned. In this particular case, there has been no resignation. In fact, I know you guys, the city's required to respond in a certain amount of days. You still haven't gotten answers in terms of requests. Give me an idea where we go from here.
Well, I think that's one of the big questions that still remains. The town has been very quiet on what has been done and what will be done to investigate these claims. As far as we know, the investigation is just beginning pretty much 3 weeks after this first came to light. And Detective Abate's attorney told us that even he is not sure if he's confident at this point that an unbiased, thorough investigation can take place by the town. and the town has been very quiet about what actions it does plan on taking.
And just putting the human element of this, when you have two husband and wife on an active force bringing an alleged complaint against the chief, you can see how this could divide a precinct house, or certainly compromise what's in the best interest of everybody. And I think it's in everyone's best interest they get to the bottom of it. All right, terrific reporting, Mark and Matt. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you can read Matt and Mark's digital report right now on LOHUD.com. And we also invite you to read the full print report. It comes out this Sunday, January 14th, in the Journal News. Coming up next, Amy Schumer, she's in it. Steve Martin, he wrote it. But the question is, did John Simon like it? The legendary and very picky theater critic. He is next with his review of the Broadway show Meteor Shower.